Hello, welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 37. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and blogger of Let's Talk Kids Health. As you know, the concept of the show is to share information about behavioral health, parenting, and family wellness. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now, this episode was pre-recorded and is premiering now, so please let us know you watched it by commenting, liking, and asking questions, and then we will come back and answer them for you. The replay will be immediately available after the broadcast. Now, please share this episode with anyone you think would benefit because sharing is caring. And if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out some of my past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. Okay, now on to this week's guest. Let's welcome Sandi Schwartz. Sandi is a journalist specializing in parenting, wellness, and the environment. She's written for Chicken Soup for the Soul, Scary Mommy, and Very Well Family, among other publications. She founded Ecohappiness Project to help families build a nature habit to feel happier and calmer by exploring positive psychology tools through engagement with nature. Previously, she held communications positions at the United States Environmental Protection Agency and National Academy of Sciences. She has a master's in government environmental focus from Johns Hopkins University and a specialization certificate in foundations of positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. She is an active member in environmental and writing organizations, including Children in Nature Network, American Society of Journalists and Authors, Sierra Club, and more. Sandi splits time between Florida and New Jersey with her husband and 2 children. Sandi, thank you so much for coming on the show. I am so excited to chat with you today.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And, I think this is really timely because mental health, as you know, has been exploding. I mean, it was always an issue prior to the pandemic, but I think the pandemic has just really magnified the problems. And hopefully, as people are watching this, they're going to get some really good ideas for different ways of promoting mental health and wellness. So I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Great.
So just as an introduction, I know I read your impressive biography, but I'm really curious, as I think all the viewers and listeners are, just to know, how did you get interested in this intersection between nature and mental health?
So my interest in nature began way back in high school when I cleaned up a polluted river in my home state of New Jersey. And I became very involved and passionate about cleaning up the environment. I went on to major in environmental studies in college. And then, as you heard, I got a master's in government environmental policy. And I really thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer working on water rights issues out in Arizona. And, life takes some interesting twists and turns. I was always a stressed out kid. And looking back, I had a lot of symptoms of nerves. My stomach would bother me before going to school in the morning. I was a little nervous going to sleepovers and birthday parties. I never really understood any of it. And even in college, I remember having physical symptoms from being stressed, from grades and all that. So I ended up, as many of your parents listening probably have been through, infertility, struggles to have my children. And so that, of course, besides the hormones, it also increases a lot with, you feel very anxious. So I also experienced what I now realize was postpartum anxiety. Mm-hmm. So after I had my baby, I was just ramped up, and I was always just kind of, attuned to every little sound and worried about, making sure he was fed and he's sleeping, and just on edge, right? Completely on edge. And I guess some parents can adjust better than others. And for me, it was a struggle. And I started, to experience some panic. And so I embarked on a journey to find out, how could I address this? And what were some other options besides just medication? So this is where I stumbled upon the world of positive psychology, which I just think is such a wonderful way to look at our concerns and our issues. Instead of looking at the negative, like, why do I have these problems? Like looking back and dwelling on every childhood experience, we can look at the positives and implementing them, such as spending time in nature, experiencing awe around us, feeling gratitude, and mindfulness. Those are just some of the key components of positive psychology. So I put that all together, and as I wrote it more and more, I became more focused on positive psychology from a nature perspective. There's not a ton written about that, and especially for children. So that's where I am today with the Ecohappiness Project.
Yeah, and I was so excited when I connected with you because I think this is such an important concept. And I know a lot of families and my kids, I have a high schooler and middle schooler. I know that transition from elementary to middle school and on to high school, their sadness at not having recess anymore and not getting outside is a tangible. I was just talking to them about it, So, I think a lot of us are concerned because those types of things are sort of getting cut out of the school day. And obviously during the pandemic, the only thing we could do was to promote getting outside, but keeping apart, right? So I think the parents are constantly thinking about like, how can we get our kids outside and back to nature, especially with screens, technology, dings all over the place. I mean, it's a true problem.
Yes, and it's interesting. My daughter just entered 4th grade, and one of her biggest complaints with the schedule was, "Oh, mommy, we don't have recess every day."
Oh,
so like I guess they have recess, and then the days they don't, they have phys ed. So they're at least moving around. But we're also in Florida, so we happen to have a different experience being able to be outside, and the kids go to a school that is external always. So I went to back to school night. I was concerned about my middle schooler because he doesn't have phys ed or recess anymore, but he's walking outside a lot from his class to class. So I feel like I was pretty tired after that evening. So I know he's getting the exercise he needs as well in the time, and they eat outside as well.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so jealous. I mean,
I know that's not, it's not like that in the summer down here though. So.
Right. Yeah, yes. But I mean, that's so wonderful that, there are certain, environments that are conducive to that. And I think though, that's another thing that as a pediatrician, I think about too, because there are some neighborhoods or communities where it's not as safe to be outside, right? Or there's not those resources where there's paved places for picnic tables or anything like that for these children to play and just be.
Well, one of my big pushes with my message is, I say pretty clearly, I am a suburban environmentalist. Okay. I'm not, a lot of the books written about getting outside are, people who are really, the campers and the into camping and hiking. And I really want to reach the people living in the cities and the suburbs because it's a different lifestyle. And so I talk a lot about your own backyard. And if you don't have a backyard, your balcony, hopefully, or even the little corner, if you live in an urban environment, there's got to be, every urban environment has something. You can find a patch of grass somewhere. So really honing in on that. And even just looking out the window is beneficial. And even more so, believe it or not, I've done a lot of research and writing on technology, like just looking at the video on our screen of a flower blooming, it reduces cortisol. I mean, the science is there to back it up. So as much as we do want to get them outside, we can sneak in some other ways as well.
Yeah, I happen to, see that part in your book. And I was just like, oh, wow, I guess there is that virtual reality and you could still watch it. It's not a substitute for the real thing, but it's better than nothing. And so I was pleased to see you delving into that research because I don't know as much about this research. So I was really excited to also chat with you today. Well, I mean, I guess then can we transition just so that everybody's on the same page? I mean, we're sort of talking about it, but what are the key benefits of nature then for mental health?
So there are thousands of studies now, fortunately. I think we all kind of innately knew from hundreds of years of history and writing and cultures that being outside is beneficial. But now we actually have the scientific data to back it. And, they can prove that, again, like cortisol levels can decrease, blood pressure can decrease, our breathing pace, our pulse, all of that just by looking at nature, even more so being out immersed in nature. They did a lot of studies in Japan about, if you've heard of forest bathing, which is a kind of new term, and it sounds kind of quirky, but it's really just about being mindful on a walk. Like yesterday, I went for a walk at the park next door and just really looked at the trees, looked at the leaves and the bark and the branches, and you're soaking it in. And instead of just being on a rush and be like, okay, there's a tree, you really kind of look at it almost from an artist's perspective. Mm-hmm. And that just makes you feel better. It makes you happier. It calms you down. And yeah, the science proves, again, like they've had people go on walks either in a very urban city environment with no vegetation versus a forest. And it's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, it sounds so easy, right? And so I guess as parents, we just have to sort of tell ourselves, we are going to spend the next, 10, 15 minutes without a phone, without anything, and just kind of tune in to our senses again, because, the fast pace of our lives and having to get things done, boom, 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 boom. Like you just said, like sometimes I'm driving and I'm like, oh, I'm already here, because you just kind of go on autopilot. So it's really about not being an autopilot and really taking the time to take in everything that's around you.
Yes. A few years ago, I wrote an article actually about driving and how to utilize the stops. Because boy, do you get stopped a lot, at the red lights, especially if you live in suburbia. And to really, look around, look at the clouds. This morning, we saw the gorgeous colors in the sky as the sun was rising, as it rises later and later in the fall here. And, I said to my kids, wow, look at that, and usually, and we were sleepy too. So it's just opening your eyes and being mindfulness and gratitude, which is sort of then clinching that mindfulness and saying, oh, I'm grateful that I saw that this morning. It made me feel good. That's like putting that whole puzzle together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, I guess I'm really glad that you brought that up because, again, I just want to clarify, in your book, you talk about a lot of different things. And I think we're going to talk about some of those, right? So there are different techniques to just reconnect to nature. I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question. So what are some of the main tools for connecting kids to nature to help them feel happier and calmer? You can notice things, right? You could describe things. You can be intentional about it. Are there any other ways to do that as parents?
So, what I did, and after, again, I started with the general idea of positive psychology, like the general idea of gratitude, the general idea of mindfulness. And I then really honed in on the nature piece. Mm-hmm. So each chapter of my book then goes through it in a specific way. There's a chapter on awe and gratitude. So awe is a really interesting concept that is just developing the science now. And that is really just being so amazed by the moment. And it doesn't have to be nature oriented. You could be in awe at the symphony or at a science experiment or, at a baby, a newborn. And it's just kind of transports you, almost like what broadens your universe. You're like, wow, you're looking at the stars, it makes you feel awe. So there's that, and then having the gratitude piece. And we can practice gratitude in a number of ways. I talk about the traditional gratitude journal where you write down like 3 things every evening, but you can do that in creative ways. You can make a blog, you can sing a song, you can write a poem. Kids love video, now, so they could do a TikTok if they're into that. And it's just getting them, around the dinner table. Every day could be Thanksgiving, in your home. And it's very, very quick. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of research to show that is a huge way to boost mood and reduce stress. And then I talk about creative arts, which, there's a lot, you can find a lot of books on nature art, but no one was really talking about what are the benefits? How does it make you feel? And so anything from going on a nature poetry walk to painting, a tree, or all of that, photography. You can get your kids into photography, capturing that moment, because then you can go back to it. If your family's into nature photography and you go on hikes and you say, oh, we're going to take pictures of colorful flowers. Well, now you can take that home and put that all around your house, like put it up on your walls. You can create a slideshow, you can do so much with that. I take pictures of nature, and I do watercolor painting when I'm not writing. It's a good counterbalance to that. And then there's, I guess the more obvious, like spending time with animals. And there's a lot of different levels of that. A lot of people obviously have pets, just immersing in wildlife, going bird watching, going to the zoo, all of that. Again, a lot of research shows connecting with, non-human animal creatures is a whole nother experience that can just bring us a peace and calm. And so there's so much that we can do. And it doesn't mean you have to commit a weekend or a week to a big hiking trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes a barrier, because you're like, oh my gosh, to pack everything, what do we need? I don't have time to take a couple days and go out in the country or whatever, right? Sometimes some parents are like, but I love these little tidbits of advice where it doesn't need to be this big thing. Just get outside.
How about a plant? How about taking care of a plant in your home?
Yes.
Wow, there is a lot of research on the benefits of plants in classrooms and hospital rooms, and how it just boosts our well-being. So.
Yeah, my daughter, just as an aside, she's in 6th grade, and she's in science, and she brought home these 3 beans, and she had to do an experiment. And so she's got 3 bean plants, and every day she's checking on it, and they're growing tall, and she's like, oh, I'm so excited. Did you see how tall they are? So it just brings her a lot of joy to see something like that. It's so simple too. And then, so I was just wondering, like, we're talking about kids and parents and nature, but how can parents easily build that nature habit, especially if maybe they're not an outdoors person themselves,
right.
Right? So that way their kids can come to love this as well.
Yes. So I thought about this a lot, and I think the best solution is to start with what you or your children, your family already loves. Okay. So I actually created a quiz called the Nature Habit Quiz, where you answer 10 questions for each child, and it'll put them in a category. There's 5 different categories. So if they're the artsy child, or they're the athletic child, or they're the yogi, they love yoga and mindfulness and chilling out, then you'll be able, so you start with what they already love, and then you focus on what can we do to immerse ourselves more and experience nature, to feel relaxed. And by starting with that, right? Like maybe they're a cartoonist and they've never, thought of even drawing nature, but now you can kind of push them in that direction a little bit and see if that's where their interest lies. So the quiz is fun because you'll get, the category that your child's in, and then a whole list of ideas straight from the book about activities that you can do with each child. And, if you have 5 kids and they all have different activities, you'll be busy, but at least you can put them all in their corner of the room, or, in the backyard, and they can each do what they love.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, because I think and I love that if you do the quiz, you then get a list of ideas, so you don't even have to think about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. So where do parents go to find this quiz and find out more about you and your book?
Sure. Well, everything is on the homepage at ecohappinessproject.com. You'll find a quiz. I also have a calendar that so every day you download that, it'll give you a little nature fun activity you can do, again, in your own backyard for a month. And that's fun. I actually designed that during the beginning of the COVID lockdown. I challenged myself. Actually, I did it for 100 days, and I posted on my Instagram that I did something to connect to nature for 100 days straight. So,
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I stayed busy and happy during that time, believe it or not. I find it's a little bit trickier going back. Reemergence for me has been more challenging and stressful. So I can understand, if kids and parents right now are looking for the tools to find some relief.
Yeah. And then you mentioned your book. Can people buy that now? How do they get it?
Sure. The book Finding Eco Happiness is available online for pre-order now.
Hmm.
It is set to be published on March 22nd, which I think is kind of a fun date because it's exactly 1 month before Earth Day. So I'll be planning some fun, time between activities between that and Earth Day, and get everyone excited about going outside and connecting to nature.
I love that. I love that. And before we go, I mean, because wanted to also let physicians know, because you brought up in your book about Park RX America,
Yes. Yes.
right? And can you mention a little bit about that? Because you wrote about it in your book, and it's just something I think as pediatricians or providers who write prescriptions, I think it also carries a little bit extra weight when physicians sort of say, "Here's a prescription to get outside." I love that.
Yeah, so it's a great organization, and they have a map. So you can, I believe, as a pediatrician, sign up to be like in their database, so
Mhm.
that if parents are, or if they know about it, they can then seek out physicians that do it. Or there's materials that you could go to your own physician and say, hey, what about starting this? Or my kid really needs one of these. Um, so yeah, instead of just jumping to medication, or as a complementary, therapy, to therapy,
Mhm.
psychology, or medication, or all of the above, adding nature into the mix as well can be very beneficial. And the doctors, they actually provide, I guess, a template where you can physically give a prescription that says, go to your local park and sit out there for 20 minutes, every Wednesday. I have a really neat anecdotal story in the book that talks about a young girl who was in the hospital with chest pains and really was very sick. And then was able to, like, her father had a hammock in his backyard and she never used it, but she started using it like once a week and she felt so much better. So there's a lot of great stories out there of success. And I hope that more doctors will turn to that, at least as an option in the beginning when a child is experiencing stress.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, after I saw that, I did sign up. So I was like,
Oh, that's
this is amazing.
wonderful. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
so excited.
I hadn't heard of that. So, and
Hmm.
I'm always looking for resources like that. I personally think it would be great in the setting of, again, just family wellness, doing things together as a family, promoting that as prevention, but then also for kids who have mild to moderate symptoms of depression, anxiety, the stress, right? And then also for kids with ADHD, in the fact that we
Yes.
want them to learn to pay attention to their surroundings, to build that attention, and to be able to sort of observe. So I also see many applications for it. So thank you for introducing me to that
Oh,
when I
that's
read about
great.
it.
And I know they've implemented it on many college campuses as well.
Uh-huh.
As you can imagine, that if you don't deal with the stress at a young age, like myself,
Yeah.
it just continues to grow. So they have to nip it in the bud.
That's right. That's right. Well, this has been such an exciting conversation. And, I'm just going to put it out there, Sandy. I would love to have your book as one of my parenting book club picks next year. So maybe we'll
That would be
kind of
great.
keep that on the docket. And, the followers who are in my parenting discussion group, if you're excited about it, let me know, because then I'll put that in the calendar for next year. So thank you so much for sharing all this wealth of information, the research, the benefits of getting outside, because again, like I said, I think we need to do more of that. And thank you for bringing attention to this topic.
Sure.
So next week's guests, let me just share with you. So next week's guests are Julia Schechter and Dr. Scott Collins, where we're going to talk about ADHD in girls. For those of you who remember, Dr. Scott Collins came on a special exclusive episode with me, and we talked about Endeavor RX. video game therapeutics for children with ADHD. And that episode is still available, but only available in my parenting discussion group. So please join it. It's free. What are you waiting for? And if you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, please feel free to reach out to me at Dr. Narissa at letstalkkidshealth.org, or drop me a comment or message on social media. And remember, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, to be alerted live every week when I go and do an episode. Again, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.